So one thing we definitely have to do no matter what is to remove this kind of logic into like a separate class. So let's go ahead and create it. This is pretty much a handler. You can see it has a command, it has a function called handle. So what handles is handler. So here we go. I'm gonna make a new directory called command in my application folder because it's application layer, because it tells me when something needs to be executed. And it has an overview of the application processes. So here we go. I'm gonna go ahead and make a command handler. So this is um, just an inspiration for now. So I'm just gonna call it test dot command handler. And notice I'm using this notation. I think it's more like Angular like. Here we go. And here, let's see what would it do. So it would be a test handler. Probably implement some sort of interface or extend the abstract class. But in general, all it has to do is to have a handle method. And in this handle method, we want to provide a command of some certain type. And here we go. That's all that the handler does. So we can also export that class and do whatnot. One thing you have to notice though is there is the CQS approach, which says command query separation. You can think about it on many levels. One level is to actually separate your commands from your queries, but that's more CQRS. We're not gonna talk about it just yet, but it's gonna come eventually in our videos. The next thing is, so the CQS is pretty much a separation of concerns. So when you deal with the state, or when you deal with things like storages or states or in-memory data storage, what you want to do, you want to separate commands from your queries. How do you know something is a command? Well, a command is execution of something on the state. So it would be just, I don't know, calling to alter the state. And those commands, those functions that actually do it, must be void. This way, you will make sure that whenever something changes the state, it changes that inside here and it doesn't leak out. And then the query would be like your getters or get something or fetch something or do something. And it should do no more but just actually accessing the data storage and getting that data for you. If you approach this from the CQS perspective, you're gonna have a lot less bugs in your code. Yes, you write more code, yes, but it's a lot more manageable. So on the beginning, you might feel like, oh, it's a lot of things I have to do. Well, it is, but with time, it will actually make a lot of sense, and it will be much easier to introduce all the senior developers in your projects because this is like a common standard. So this is a typical command. So what would typical command handler do? Well, in our case, it would just execute a state, but eventually, remember, we would like to get rid of the state altogether. I mean, the state pattern is good for medium-sized projects, but with the scale, it will become very big and very bloated. So I'm trying to show you a better way to actually handle like enterprise level stuff. So here we go. We have a handler. What would it typically do? Actually, it's pretty straightforward. So first of all, it will have something like it will get the data it needs to manipulate. In this situation, it's a test command handler, so it will be like a test command. This command would contain information about how to fetch that data and what I need to do with it. And then, for example, I would have some test data fetched from storage dot find or whatever. So for now, I'm gonna write like asynchronous code, but keep in mind that could be observable. So I could need to maybe do some pipes and taps and stuff like this. But for now, I just want to keep it simple. So I get the data. That ideally would be my domain model. So it's not just an interface. It would actually be something rich in logic. And then I would do some test data. I don't know what I want to do. Maybe I want to activate, or it will have some, again, sort of a command on it that would alter its internal state. And then I would either return it or fetch it or just save it, you know. So I could also do storage.save and then test data. And then I might want to decide to actually output it, so I would need to do something. But what do we do about it? I mean, we have a void here. We can't just return things. Well, no, of course we can't return things, but we can use decoupling mechanisms. What would that be? Well, it could be maybe event bus. I could say event bus.send and then send this object over. And that way, my components, I could subscribe to it. And this way, you don't need a state because all the state logic is inside this object-oriented models, you know, and that's pretty good actually. So that's more or less what it does. We're pretty far right now. If you can implement that, it's actually pretty good. It's gonna benefit your project big time. Of course, there is a lot of things that I missed here, like what do we do with the connection with the backend and stuff like this. It touches upon interface segregation I've discussed before. But in general, like let's leave it at that for now. Now, what is the best developer experience here? Like whenever I code, I don't want to like fixate on a specific solution. I want to actually first like brainstorm and think what would be the best. Because the problem is the command handler as the layer in application should not know anything about this infrastructure application layer, like command dispatcher, right? So when we look here, the dispatcher should know about things like resolver, and resolver should resolve the command handler. So resolver knows about the command handlers, but the command handler shouldn't know about the resolver. Then we have a circular dependency. So what can we do? Well, we need to figure it out a very smart way of actually dealing with it. Right here is very like basic. We could map it like this. The problem is that we need something better. And if I keep looking at this example, I'm gonna think only about this way of doing it. So let's just think about I'm a developer. I write this command handler. Now I just want this to work. You know, I don't know. I would love to use convention. I would love to use that if I have a test command. So let me create this. I'm gonna make it in the same file. Normally I wouldn't do it. Test command, and this test command has some constructor with some data, probably some sort of a payload. For now, I'm just gonna make it like an object. Okay, so once I have this test command, I can put it right here. Sorry. Here we go. So this is already pretty good developer experience. I just, and I would like that to work, without anything doing in like framework kind of stuff. Well, it turns out it's not that easy. So we have to think what would be the next thing. So thinking about me as a developer, what can I do? Well, if I cannot resolve it by name and if I don't want to do like extensive mappings, maybe, and it's actually pretty common approach, like you could use decorator, right? So you could have like a handler decorator, and then you could say it handles what, and then you can say test command. All right, so something like this. So that's pretty good developer experience actually. Like I tell this handler handles this command. I would say it's a little bit unnecessary to provide that information. I mean, if I could extract it from here, that would be good. But if I use a decorator on top of the handle command, then it would invite developers to actually make more handle commands and different types of commands. But remember, like we want to keep it simple, just a single method, like just the handle. So that's pretty good developer experience, but it's not. It turns out that it's actually not working very well. So let me show you the problem. The problem is, do you know how the decorators work? Because they are not internal, like super. It's not so easy to actually make it part of your Angular code. Like you're not changing Angular core or CLI or whatever. You just add things on top of it. So using this decorator would require you to have some sort of a mapping global array or data structure, and that's not very clean, like thinking, like I'm me thinking about my code, and then I know that there is some sort of a global thing somewhere in hidden from me that stores this, and actually nothing prevents me from accessing it, then that's quite a problem for me. So I'm not a big fan of this approach. What I also don't like here is that we tell command handler which command it needs to handle. So technically, what we can do is to do something like this, where we, sorry, I have to copy it. And then I can just say test2 command handler that also handles the same command, and that's breaking the command handler sort of design pattern. Like a single command can get handled only by one handler, so this is not the place to put it. So where do I need to put it? Well, if I can't put it here, I need to put it here. And since I don't like the decorators, why don't I just say handler class and then just say test command handler? That will do pretty much. I mean, I have to put it in the decorator anyway, if I even like that. So what's the problem about this approach? I would love to know. Like, so let me know in the comments below. Maybe you have a good reason for doing that. I just don't see it. Now, since we can map already this information inside our classes, it's more encapsulated and in a better place. Now we have to think about resolving logic. It just doesn't happen out of the box. So what we need is sort of like a better way of resolving that, not based on the config, but based on something else. So if we have a look here, we need to another type of the resolver. This one is in memory handler resolver. That's pretty okay, to be honest. But quite a lot of times people will say, why don't you use observables? Well, I don't think observables were made for this. So a typical example would be, let me just sort of like inspire you here. Instead of doing this, we could have a observable or RxJS, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, resolver, and then you still need to provide the handlers, and then the only difference would be this piece of code. So instead of like doing this, you would just have subscribe or maybe pipe or whatever. But yeah, I mean, you're not really benefiting from it because this, first of all, this is faster because it's synchronous. The asynchronous code only complicates the situation. You have to worry about the memory leaks and things like this, and it's not really benefiting you. So if you can execute it already like here, I would like that. So I don't buy into the RxJS approach for it. So we're in this situation when actually this would be pretty cool. Unless someone has a much better idea, I would love to hear that. Maybe the only thing is actually this experience, because copy and pasting this, even if I can make like a factory for it with all those dependencies and whatnot, it's pretty tedious. So let's think what would be the best thing for me to do. Well, the best thing for me to do would be to have only one handler, like sort of it is here, but get the data from somewhere else. So why don't we create something like this? So I will make a provider that will be based on my token. So let's just call it command handler. Then what I would like to also do is to use class. Then I would tell what class is it, and in my case it's a test command handler. And then I can also use the multi true here. Why is it like this? It's because then I could copy paste this piece of code and put it, sorry, this piece of code and put it here. And now I can have a test2 command handler and whatever. So that's not the best, to be honest, but actually it's the best I can think of. So again, if you find a better way, please do let me know. I've been trying like using the injector in Angular and stuff like this, but this works pretty good. Yes, of course, I have to have a single line for every time I actually do it. But if I use Angular schematics, I can get that injected for me. So it's doing pretty okay, actually. The best developer experience will be if I can do ngg command and then name the handler, and that would scaffold all the things for me. And actually, this is what we did in our company.